Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new around here, my name is Leah and I'm the Redheaded Witch. So in today's video, I wanted to share 5 tips of advice that I would give to myself at the beginning of my witchcraft practice. So choosing just 5 tips was actually quite difficult for me. And I also feel like where I'm at now in my practice is quite different than, where I am or where I was. Mainly because my practice is so rooted in like my local community, and now I'm on the other side of the country. And so this is kind of what inspired this video, is like if I could give myself back then the advice that I have obtained over the years now, like what would I say? I was talking with a fellow practitioner the other day about like my personal journey and kind of how it came to be. And it's kind of interesting because now when I look at my practice, I feel like I'm a beginner again, and that's because I have moved across the country and everything is so different. The landscape is different, the spirits are different. With this huge change in my personal life, it ultimately reflects my spiritual life too, and just my craft. So without further ado, here are the 5 tips that I would give myself at the beginning of my witchcraft practice. I do have them on my phone, so I'm gonna be looking down at them. But number 1 is build a relationship with your local community. So to elaborate on this, for me, one of the main ways that I come to understand a place is researching the history. I feel like that gives me a really good sense of what this place has experienced throughout time. And I think that also helps me kind of figure out, the certain like landmarks. For example, we have so many different landmarks here in the Pacific Northwest. I live very close to the Columbian River Gorge, so getting familiar with the history of that specific landmark and landscape is really important to me, especially if I want to build a relationship with that river. Same goes for the mountains here. We are quite literally surrounded by volcanoes. We have Mount St. Helens, we have Mount Rainier, we have Mount Hood. That's just to name a few here in the Pacific Northwest. So I really like to better understand kind of the history of these particular mountains, but also getting to know like the native names of these mountains, because obviously when it was colonized, they were all renamed. So kind of becoming familiar with what the indigenous folks here had named these particular mountains, and also the indigenous folks that were present and are present in my community space now. That ultimately is going to really help me have a perspective of the history of this space, and also kind of what happened throughout the years. Obviously, that's what history is. And it's interesting because history was never a topic in school that I was very good at, mainly because I question a lot of things, probably too much to the point where like it doesn't stick in my brain. So that is like a little bit of a struggle, like learning curve for me personally, but I know other people are not like that. Also, one of the ways that I build a relationship with my local community is visiting the cemeteries. There is a local cemetery not far from where I live that I will visit, especially when I am passing it, like on that road. And it's quite a simple, very beginning stages, but that is one of the ways that I have learned to connect with the spirits of this particular place, because these are folks who have lived here prior to myself. This can be a very like simple practice. It doesn't have to be complex. For me, I actually looked into volunteering at my local cemetery, and that's quite easy. You can contact your local city. A lot of the times on the website it will have like how to get involved in your community space. And so if you want to volunteer at your local cemetery, you can look into that. But for me personally, I just do it kind of on my own. I just visit and I pick up any trash. A lot of the times there is trash that is left there, so I will go and just take a pair of gloves with me and a trash can or a trash bag if there's not one available there. I will also just like speak with them like I would kind of like my neighbors. I just continue to kind of like spend some time there and just talk with them and introduce myself, let them know who I am and like where I'm from, and kind of like, my first impressions of the area. And I like to just like spend some time at certain tombstones and just kind of getting familiar with names. Another thing that you can do is also visiting local parks. This is a great way to get to know like your local plants and flora. Again, really starting to familiarize yourself with the spirits that are present, and that extends to the flora and fauna. So maybe particular birds are present, native plants, and also getting to know if there are any endangered plants too that you should be aware of. So honestly, that probably could have been more than what tip number 1. That was probably like kind of like a umbrella of tip number 1. But if I could tell myself anything at the very beginning stages, it's to get to know and connect to your local community, because ultimately that is going to be such a foundation for your craft. Okay, tip number 2 is quite simple, but it's creating a ritual for yourself every single day. Something that is consistent and something that is very grounding for you. And this doesn't have to be complex. It could be something simple as your morning breakfast or your morning coffee can become a ritual. And there's so many magical opportunities in that, you know, enchanting your coffee with certain syrups, elixirs, or spices like cinnamon, or even the method of your choice to brew your coffee. Is it a French press? Is it a pour over? Is it espresso? There's just so many different ways and methods to create like an enchanted morning ritual for yourself. This can also be like your morning shower if you're someone who showers in the morning. This is ultimately a cleansing ritual for yourself, and you can use enchanted soaps, some that you may craft yourself or some that you have obtained from someone else or from the store that you've enchanted, but using something that is for a magical purpose within this mundane task that many of us do. And so there's once again a lot of opportunities there to make it quite magical. For me personally, I like to recite a certain incantation when I am showering, especially when I am kind of like have like a busy work day, or I have some sort of presentation or something that I need to do that I really want to cleanse away any sort of residual energy from the days prior or the weeks or whatever. Not saying that I don't shower for weeks. I just realized that's probably what it sounded like. No, I just meant like, you know, if there's like baggage or something that you've been carrying on, maybe you're experiencing something heavy in your personal life, like just being able to like energetically cleanse. I'm not saying like don't shower for weeks. I don't know. This can also be a workout. This is something that I have personally integrated into my daily life, is starting to move my body and really become more physical. And so I now have a workout routine that I do, and this is also a ritual that you can do. Moving your body is so great. It releases energy, it also heightens your energy, and really does make your spells quite powerful because you're just raising that energy again. There's so many different ways that you can make this quite magical. For example, you can enchant your shoes. So if you're a runner like myself, you may decide to enchant your shoes to really make this specific workout and perhaps a focus of empowerment or courage or confidence. This is something that I have started to do, and I wish I had done it sooner. Also, this is not sponsored, but Olipop, so good. Tip number 3 is using mundane tools for magical workings. Once again, this is an emphasis on folk magic. Folk magic, its roots are in using mundane tools for magical spells and workings. I know there are so many beautiful tools out there in your local shops and online, and just even myself, like I will offer like handcrafted tools and everything like that, but they are not always a necessity. Obviously, this is going to vary from practice to practice. There are some occult practices that do have specific tools. So if you are someone who is interested in a particular occult practice that does have that, obviously please acquire what you feel comfortable to. But if you are a folk practitioner or beginning to kind of create and explore your craft in that way, you may decide to kind of look to mundane tools. For example, a pair of scissors has so many different magical working opportunities. It's great for cord cutting rituals, it's great for cleansing, it's great for protection, and it's simple. It's something that many households do have. So kind of being able to look at your mundane tools in with a magical lens really does open a door for some creativity and being able to play more in your craft. Just the other day I was talking with a practitioner, like if you're not playing some in your craft, like sometimes it gets boring. And like when you're starting your practice and you're beginning to do workings and spells, like have some creativity and have some fun. Like that's gonna be one of the best ways that you learn. Today, even, you know, with so much social media and like folks from walks of life and different practices are going to, you know, kind of like tell beginners like, oh, don't do that yet. Oh no, you're not ready yet. You get to decide for yourself if you're ready. I think so many beginners tend to be a little bit timid about doing a spell or kind of do any sort of working because they think that they may do something wrong. But the thing is like that's gonna be one of the ways that you learn if you did or did not do something wrong. But that's just my 2 cents. Like obviously if you personally don't feel ready to do a particular working, don't push yourself. There's no pressure. You can approach it or kind of write down the steps that you think you would need to take in order to feel ready for them. But for me, I learn best by doing, and so a lot of my workings are just trial and error. And this leads me to tip number 4, which is using discernment in the spiritual and occult community, specifically in online spaces. So if you're interacting with someone who perhaps makes you feel uncomfortable in any sort of way, or you know, has you doing things that are just outside of your personal boundaries for a particular ritual or practice, or perhaps you're, you know, joining a coven of some sort and they have rules that just like don't really sit right with you, listen to your intuition. That is your spirit communicating to you, and learn to respect your boundaries and kind of, you know, using that discernment. I find that a lot of folks who are at the beginning of their practice tend to be so like they're like a sponge, you know, like they will soak up any information and anything from anyone. And sometimes discernment is one of those things that gets left behind. So I just always want to recommend to strengthen your intuition and to really focus on how certain people that you encounter online and in person who are also within the space, like how they make you feel, like what are your initial response and what's your kind of like first impression, because ultimately a lot of the times those are correct. This is not to say that like, you know, there's no good people out there. I am so extremely grateful and blessed to have met the folks that I have within this space, like physically and online. I have met some of like lifetime friends in this way, but I'm not naive. I know not everyone has good intentions. And the last tip, but surely not the least, and it does kind of tie into number 4, is focus on connecting to your energy. So this is really becoming familiar with your intuition and your spirit and your energy, especially when it comes into you know, your workings and your rituals. When you become familiar with your energy, you're able to use and strengthen your discernment in situations, but also be able to really put them into your workings and your spells. And also becoming familiar with your energy, like how it feels, how you work with it, your relationship with your energy. That is also a really great foundational practice to have before you start to incorporate other energies, especially if you're working with other spirits, because ultimately you're going to know how your energy feels and if there is some sort of external energy that is tapping into it, or how to discern your energy from another energy and how to even identify what that energy is or who that energy is. There are so many different methods of doing this. There is, once again, meditation practices are really great. I personally like to do trance-like meditations, which is essentially like having some sort of rhythm or movement involved in a meditation. So it's like kind of more of like an active meditation, and really focusing on like any sort of visuals or like sensations in my body during that time. But it's a really great practice to have. And I think at the very beginning of my practice, I didn't give myself enough time to discern my energy from someone else's energy, and so that kind of allows you to once again be a sponge and absorb anything and anyone and any sort of energy around you because you're just like so receptive to it. And so when you become familiar with your energy in particular, you're able to create those energetic boundaries, which ultimately protects you. So ultimately those are my 5 tips that I would give myself at the beginning of my witchcraft practice. Like I said, there are just so many other tips that I would give myself, but I think at the end of the day, those are some really good 5 foundational tips. If you're interested in exploring a witchcraft practice and you're just starting out, I do have my book, The Beginner Witch's Handbook, which is out now and available to order. I do cover a lot of foundational practices as well as discovering your ancestral spirits and how you may decide to connect with them, and also include them in your witchcraft practice. Ultimately, this isn't a necessity, everyone's different, but if that is something that you're interested in, I do discuss the foundations of it in my book. As always, thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video. I am actually going to participate in Ivy's Yuletide, I don't know if it's a challenge or what she like called it by name, but I do have intentions of doing that towards the end of the year, and I'm so excited because I'm gonna be on winter break and I'm gonna have all the time in the world to be able to sit here and share with you all some really festive and fun things and prompts that she has on her channel, and so I'm really excited. But until then, I will talk to you soon, and thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.